Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Jakarta Tech Talk. Today we have Thomas Langer to discuss Jakarta Commons specifications. Thomas is a consulting member of technical staff at Oracle. If you have any questions for Thomas as we move through today's presentation, please feel free to ask it in the chat or using the Ask a Questions tab at the bottom of the page. So without any further delay, Thomas, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, or whatever time of the day is in your time zone. I will try to introduce the ideas why I proposed Jakarta Commons and also show a short example of one of the areas that are of interest. So let's start. So why did we, or did I decide in the end to go for it and try to get people behind this idea? So after working on implementations of multiple Jakarta specifications, I found out that there are certain areas where an API is required by multiple specifications, and it's actually designed by multiple specifications, and it's causing inconsistencies where to achieve the same thing, you do it differently depending on which spec you are currently using. And this is a problem both for the implementer side, but it's also a problem for the user. Because if I, as a user, want to, for example, define a list of strings as a type, I need to use a different API depending whether I want to do this for CDI or I want to do this for JAX-RS. So that was the first area where I think there are a lot of inconsistencies that could be actually fixed by having a common set of APIs that will be shared. Second area is Jakarta Common Annotations as a specification, which is kind of orphaned for a long time. And I think it would be great to have it as part of the Commons specification, so it's properly managed and can evolve as other specifications can as well. So basically, Common Annotations is doing the same thing for annotations and is doing it quite well for a very long time. We just want to do similar thing in other APIs. So from the scope, as I said, new home for common annotations, new common APIs and utilities that can be used by other specifications. This may result in more than one artifact. So, the intention is not to create one big jar file that will contain everything. It's more to create things that can be picked and chosen by other specs and used cleanly, so you don't, include dependencies which are not relevant to a specification. I'll probably say one thing that's out of scope. When we discussed it, even with other people who are, on specifications, we do not want to create utility classes like, for example, codecs or things that are implementation specific. This is really for use in APIs. So what are the initial ideas? What were the things that we found out during the initial analysis of what could be done? First, I already talked about it, generic type or type literal, depending on the spec you talk about. I will show a small example on that after I finish with the slides. Support for Java package for Java module system. This requires some analysis, but there are certain things that are repetitive when it comes to package to modules. So, for example, how can you expose a class that you have to a specification rather than to the implementation, and still the implementation can access its internal types? So this will require some work to find out if there is actually anything we can really nicely do, but that's definitely an area that could improve. So we will see what can be done there. Another area that is very important for me is consistency, and this comes to feature consistency on design patterns. So if, for example, builder pattern is accepted by the whole Jakarta EE environment, it would be great if there was some support for it in the common module. For example, an interface defining the basic methods of a builder. And again, we already have some ideas. This needs to go through discussions, but that's one area that is interesting. Priority handling, we currently, as part of the config specification, we reopened the discussion on priorities and their handling. And again, it would be great if we managed to find some way how to define a consistent handling that could be then easily reused by other specs, rather than redefining what it means for every specification as it is right now. The last feature we talked about is language model. This is coming mostly from CDI Lite specification, where there is a need to do some processing at compile time. It's expected that at build time you will create some kind of meta model that then will be reused at runtime, so you don't need to do reflection. This comes obviously with a need to define a model that will describe the Java classes and interfaces and annotations and so on. And this model right now is part of CDI. And again, we saw already when we were talking about it that there probably will be need by other specification to do something similar. If that is proven and we find out that it's really the case, the language model could eventually move to the Jakarta Commons as a standalone jar to be used by others. These are the links that you can have a look at. So there is the proposal for Jakarta Commons that's available on Eclipse, and the discussion is a link to a Google document where you can also see some comments from others. When I first created the document, and I asked for others to comment. So if you are interested in the development of that, you can have a look on that. Okay, so the last part is I want to show one of the reasons why I think this is needed. So here are four, I will make it slightly bigger if I can. These are actually four statements that are doing mostly the same. We are trying to create an instance of something, of a meta information for a type. So for example, you can ask CDI to select a list of strings, or you can ask JAX-RS to give you a list of strings, or you can ask, in Helidon example, configuration to give you a list of strings. So it's exactly the same, semantically the same code, but you can see that we have four different types coming from different either specifications or implementations, but all of these are depending on one or the other specification of Jakarta. So there is a type literal from CDI, there is generic type coming from JAX-RS. These are the two specification-based things. We have an HK2, which is an injection framework for JAX-RS type literal, and then we have our implementation-specific generic type. But if there was a Jakarta Commons generic type, like we could scratch all of these and just reuse the one from the Commons. And the advantage would be that you would create it once and then just use it anywhere you want. You wouldn't need to create a new one depending on what you are talking to. So this is the inconsistency part where for a user, it's really hard to wrap your head around, like, why do I need to use something called type literal here and then generic type there? And I can't even reuse them because the specs just don't understand each other. So this is covering the initial proposal and the ideas behind it, and that's as much as I have prepared for the intro. So I think that it's now time to ask if you have some questions or if you want to discuss something further. Definitely open for that.
Okay, I don't see any questions here. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or at the bottom under the Ask a Questions tab. And while we wait for that, I will just wrap up. So our next Jakarta Tech Talk happens January 12th with Reza Raham as he presents applied domain-driven design blueprints for Jakarta EE. You can register for that using the link I will post in the chat. As well, we are always looking for more Jakarta Tech Talk. So if you're interested in presenting a talk, please fill out the following forms. Those will both be in the chat now. There we go. And I don't see any other questions. So I'd just like to thank you, Thomas, for the presentation today. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Okay, thank you very much, too. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.